In today's video, we're going to talk about what's new in CloudBees CI 2.277.2.3. Are you new here? If you are, welcome. And if you are new here, you don't know who I am. My name is Darren Pope, and I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. On April 7th, 2021, CloudBees CI 2.277.2.3 was released. In this video, we're going to take a look at a few of the new features that are available. If you've never taken a look at the release notes for CloudBees CI release, let's do that right now. In order to find the release notes, go to docs.cloudbees.com, click on the documentation link at the top, and then click on CloudBees CI. You could hover over documentation and then click on CloudBees CI. Then, in the left nav, hover over the documentation section, click on that, and then go down to Release Notes. And that will take you to the release notes for CloudBees CI. You'll see here that the latest version is 2.277.2.3, and that it was released on April 7th. There has been one revision since this release, and here you can see the full release notes for both modern cloud platforms and for traditional platforms. Now I'm going to focus today on the traditional side. There are a few extra bug fixes inside of the modern cloud platform section, but the new features are the same for both traditional and for modern. So let's go ahead and click into the traditional full release notes. And let's take a look. Now there is a critical issue. If you had been using a plugin catalog and you had been including the CloudBees CasC API plugin, you need to remove that. Otherwise, don't worry about it. If you weren't using a plugin catalog or if you haven't been using CasC yet, no big deal. There was a security advisory. You can click into that and take a look at that at your leisure, but I want to take a look at the new features and the feature enhancements that are available. Now again, this is true for both traditional and for modern. What we have now for configuration as code is you have the ability in GA to create folders and to also manage RBAC. Now if you've been used to using RBAC from the Operations Center, this will give you the ability to define RBAC for each of your controllers. Now, both of these features were in preview, now they're GA. There's also one more feature enhancement that you're able to now include the configuration as code bundle along with a support bundle when you open up a support ticket. This could make troubleshooting much easier anytime you're having to interact with CloudBees support. Now, if you haven't been using configuration as code, let's take a look at what the documentation says. Now, I'm looking specifically at the traditional side for configuration as code. There is also a modern version of this. They're very, very similar, a couple of just very, very subtle differences that are due to the platform for modern. The direct links for both the modern and the traditional configuration as code are down below this video, along with direct links to both the full release notes for both traditional and modern. So first off, let's take a look at configuring RBAC with CasC. I'll just go down to that section. If you want to do this, you're going to need to be running at least 2.249.3.1 or higher. This is when preview was available. Now that you're GA, if you're wanting to use the GA versions, then you'll have to upgrade to 277.2.3. You do have to install some plugins on the controller. One is configuration as code, and then also you need to install the RBAC access control plugin, which is there by default when you do an install suggested plugins. Then you have to do the setup, and this is the step-by-step thing that you've got to follow. I want to call it out here for you. So you have to set the master authorization strategy and not use what you were using if you were using it with Operations Center in the past. What this means is you have to be able to opt out of the authorization strategy, not necessarily the authentication strategy, but the authorization strategy. Now, how do you do that? Well, I have right now an operations center, and I also have one controller set up. It's CM1. And what I have done is, if I go under Manage Jenkins and Configure Global Security, if I scroll down to my Client Master Security section, you can see that I have Single Sign-On, Security Realm, which is authentication, and authorization strategy selected out of the three. And I'm also allowing my client masters to opt out. I have that box checked. But just because I have them set to opt out, that doesn't mean anything happens. This change right here, specifically this checkbox, is the number one bullet. So we have to allow the opt-out. Now, the second bullet or the second item is we need to either set enforce authentication only or opt out of all security enforcement on the configure page for the controller. Now, this can be a little bit confusing, so let me walk you through it. I'm going to go back over to my controller. I'm going to hover over my CM1, and I'm going to click on Configure. When we checked that Allow Client Controller to Opt Out, what that gave us was a new section right here that you would normally not see. And here is the opt-out. So I can use Global Security Enforcement, which would be the default if nothing's changed. But what we're doing is I'm setting mine to enforce authentication only. Now, there's a lot of different permutations that you could do with this. This is one of the ways that you could do this. So we're going to focus on this. In future videos, we're going to go through step by step how to do this from the ground up, and also how to migrate to CasC over time. But today, I've just set enforce authentication only. You do have the option of opting out of all security enforcement, but notice when you go back to look at the documentation, there is a separate note here. It's not required, and it gives you a couple of bullets to look at. Take a look at that, see if it applies to you. Then I've got my users need to be created either by an identity provider like LDAP, which is what I have right now, or manually. And then if you're using folder management with RBAC, then obviously you would have to have RBAC set up and ready to go to use that with the folder. And we'll take a look at that when we get to the folders. Now you could do a full export. Let's take a moment and look at what my RBAC configuration file looks like. So what I have right now is I am in my operations center, and I'm in the home directory, which is varlib CloudBees Core OC, and I'm inside of the JCasC bundle store. This is where the bundles are stored for each of your controllers. Inside of this folder, I have a CM1 folder with folder RBAC. Again, more videos in the future about how all of this works from the ground up if you haven't used it before. But let's take a look at our RBAC file. So take a look at the documentation to understand each of these sections. It will explain it better for you. But just notice here, I have a group for administrators, a group for managers, I have a group for developers, and then I also have a group for browsers. And then the roles are also associated with this. If you're used to using RBAC, each of these things look pretty familiar or should look familiar to you. Also on the roles is where you set the permissions. If you're used to working with the RBAC big grid where you check the checkboxes, these are the checkboxes. So we've set up everything including authenticated and anonymous, which you should include those. Again, whether you set any permissions on them, that's up to you. If you don't set permissions, then think of that as none of the checkboxes are checked. So it's just if you were to take a look at it, it would just be empty. Or the boxes would be there, they're just not checked. So this is what an RBAC configuration file looks like. Now let's go back over to our controller, not our operations center, but our controller, and see how this was set up. So we'll go to dashboard, controllers. I could have stopped at controllers, that's fine. CM1, and you'll notice here that we have groups and roles. Now I'm currently logged in as admin user, which has overall administrator privileges. So I can see everything here. If I click on groups, we can see the administrators group has an admin user. The managers group has manager user. Developers has not just a dev user, it also has the internal managers group, which is this group here. Let's take a look at that real quick. So developers, let's get back up here. Developers has a dev user. It has access to the manager's internal group. Remember, internal group is whatever we've defined here. And then it also has external groups, which is coming from my LDAP server. So if we take a look at it, we can see dev user, LDAP user with a shiny happy world here, and the managers group, which is referencing back to this managers. And then we also have browsers. So everything that is configured right here is set up via this YAML file. So that's RBAC. Not so quickly, but RBAC. Again, we'll revisit this in the future so you can understand how to build this from ground up. Let's take a look now at the folders. Now you'll notice on this controller that I have a top level folder, acceptance test harness. I have a folder underneath that, and then two folders under that. Again, if we were to take a look at our documentation, we can see, if I can find the section, where we are, where is it? Right there, creating folders with CasC. We also need some plugins. Now, configuration as code, we saw that before for the RBAC plugin. Here's our RBAC plugin that we would need. So these two are the same. So to do CasC for RBAC, you need these two. And obviously, if you're creating folders, you need the folders plugin. So nothing here really surprising or exciting. And then when you're creating a folder, those are created in an items YAML. Now currently the only type of item you can create is a folder. But you can see here it's a kind, an acceptance test harness, that's the name, the description. My example here is a straight copy and paste of this file. So let's just stay here instead of going back over to the shell. I have a top level folder that's called acceptance test harness. Inside of that folder, I have another item. So you can see items here is nested. I have another folder that's with test A. And then within that, I have another set of items that is another folder, product A, ATH, and product B, ATH. Easy for me to say. So if we were to take a look back now you can see, especially taking a look at the breadcrumb, here's my A and B ATHs that live within with test A and acceptance test harness. So by being able to create the RBAC first, and then we can create folders, then we can apply that RBAC to the folder. Now you may not have caught that in the documentation, but you can see that right here. This top level folder has access as admin users. And it also has the administrator role on that folder. Same thing with admin user on with test A. So let's take a look at what we have here. So if I click on acceptance test harness, so I'm down one folder level and I click on groups, you can see here that the administrators group is the only thing applied to that. If I click into that and take a look at with test A and click on groups, again, test A administrators maps back to the name of test A administrators. That's the name of the group. That's also admin user. And finally, if we go into with test A and go into product A, now you can see that we have nothing defined on product A, which is in alignment with what we see right here in the definition of items YAML. I'm going to leave the rest of the reading through the release notes up to you. Be sure though, be sure to read the release notes. In a nutshell, for this release of CloudBees CI, 2 of the configuration as code features have now gone GA, for folders and for RBAC. Also, you have the ability to include your configuration as code bundle in a support bundle when you submit one to CloudBees support. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach out to us on Twitter at CloudBeesDevs. If this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to CloudBees TV yet, why not? Take a moment, click on that subscribe button, and then ring that bell, and you'll be notified anytime there's new content available on CloudBees TV. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.